Hey everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a lead consultant with ExpatExact, an expatriate and relocation agency aiding you in finding the destination that matches your destiny. And today we need to talk about something that most financial advisors, most retirement planners, and most people you know have never seriously discussed with you. Even though it may be one of the most important strategic decisions you may make in the next decade, we need to talk about your backup country. Most Americans have put their entire life in one basket. One country, one government, one currency, one legal system, one healthcare infrastructure, one political trajectory, one jurisdiction with total authority over their assets, their movement, their options, and in some scenarios, their safety. And that basket, as durable and resilient as it has been for most of your lifetime, is not immune to bad events. It never was. The people who built the most robust, most options rich lives understood this early. Let's establish something important right up front because I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds extreme. This sounds like something survivalists talk about. I'm not that person. I hear you. And I want to offer you a reframe that I think will change how you see everything else in this video. You already practice risk management every single day. You just don't call it that. You have car insurance, not because you expect to crash, but because you understand that even careful drivers encounter situations outside their control. You have homeowners or renters insurance, not because you expect your house to flood or burn, but because the downside of being wrong is too catastrophic to leave unhedged. You have a diversified investment portfolio, not because you expect every asset class to crash simultaneously, but because concentration in any single position is a risk that prudent investors simply don't accept. Your financial advisor has almost certainly said some version of this to you. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread across asset classes, spread across sectors, spread across geographies. Why? Because no single investment is immune to a bad event. A regulatory change, a rate hike, a market correction, a black swan nobody saw coming. This isn't controversial. This is Finance 101. This is how serious people manage serious money. But here's the thing that almost nobody talks about, and it's hiding in plain sight. A backup country is not abandonment. It's not disloyalty. It is not giving up on America. It is the most sophisticated form of life diversification that exists. It is applying the same logic you already accept in your financial life to your entire life. Here's the central argument of this video, and I want you to sit with it. You do not need a catastrophe. You do not need a collapse. You do not need the end of civilization as we know it. All it takes is one thing, one shift, one change, and the life you planned, the retirement you built towards, the freedom you worked for, the security you assumed was solid can look materially different than you expected. I'm going to walk you through 4 triggers. As I do, I want you to think not about the worst case version of each, but about the plausible version, the one that doesn't require a conspiracy theory, the one that just requires history to keep doing what history does. Trigger 1 are elections. Policy can change in a single election cycle. This is not a partisan statement. It is a structural fact of democratic governance, and it applies regardless of which party you support or which outcomes you fear. Think about the policy levers that a single administration controls or strongly influences. Federal income tax rates and brackets, capital gains treatment, estate and inheritance tax thresholds, Social Security benefit structures, and solvency timelines. Medicare eligibility ages and coverage scope, retirement account contribution limits, and Roth conversion windows, regulations on the industries you work in or invest in, healthcare success and insurance market structures, property rights, currency and monetary policy through the Federal Reserve appointments. Pick the issue that matters most to you, left or right, progressive or conservative. There's almost certainly a policy domain where a single election going the other way could materially impact your financial life, your family's options, or your personal freedoms. Americans who have built a dual residency or hold a second passport don't stop caring about U.S. elections. They don't disengage from the political process. They simply stop being hostage to a single outcome. They have built what I call electoral optionality, the ability to watch the results come in with genuine equanimity, not because they don't care, but because they have options regardless of what happens. There is an enormous psychological difference between watching an election nervously, knowing your entire life trajectory hangs on the result, and watching it calmly, knowing you have a backup position already in place. One of those people planned, the other one hoped. The second are laws, and laws change faster than elections. Executive orders, agency rule changes, tax code revisions, regulatory restructuring. These happen constantly below the level of public attention with real consequences for real people. And here is what makes this trigger different from the election trigger. Elections have a schedule. You know when they're coming, you can plan around them. Law changes don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly. They move through the legislative or regulatory processes that most people aren't watching. And by the time the average person hears about them, they're already in effect. Let me give you the category of law change that I think deserves the most attention in the context of backup country strategy. Laws that affect your personal freedoms, your family rights, and your ability to live the life you have built on your own terms. Because the law is not static and it does not always move in your favor, think about the areas of personal life where the legal landscape has shifted meaningfully in just the last decade. Healthcare access, reproductive rights, minority group protections and recognition, religious liberty frameworks, educational choice, zoning, and property use. In each of these domains, laws have changed, sometimes dramatically depending on which state you live in, which party controls the legislature, and which judges sit on which courts. And here's the uncomfortable truth that most Americans avoid. The law you were counting on to protect something important to you may not exist in its current form 5 years from now. This is not cynicism. This is history. Roe v. Wade stood as settled law for nearly 50 years before it was overturned in 2022. DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, defined marriage at the federal level for over 2 decades before being struck down. In both cases, millions of Americans built their lives, their families, and their plans around a legal reality that changed beneath them. Now, consider this from a personal planning standpoint. If a law that directly governs your healthcare decisions, your family structure, your professional licensing, your religious practice, or your property rights changed in a direction that made your life materially harder or legally more complicated, what would you do? Where would you go? What options would you have? Most Americans only have one answer: stay and fight. And sometimes that is the right answer, but it should be a choice, not the only option available to you because you never built anything else. People with dual residency and a backup country don't abandon their values or their communities when the legal landscapes shift, but they do have a release valve. They have a jurisdiction where the laws align better with how they want to live. They have the legal right to be somewhere else while the political and legal battles play out at home. They are not trapped by a single government's current interpretation of what their life is allowed to look like. Think about the communities and individuals for whom this is not theoretical. LGBTQ plus couples in states where protections are increasingly precarious. Families whose reproductive healthcare decisions are now governed by criminal statutes rather than medical ones. Professionals whose licenses or practices are subject to shifting regulatory frameworks. Business owners whose industries face existential regulatory risk from a single rule change. Retirees whose benefit structures depend on legislative decisions they have no control over. At ExpatExact, some of those motivated clients we work with are not the ones who are unhappy with America in general. They're the ones who have decided that smart planning means not leaving a risk unaddressed. That is not pessimism. That is exactly the kind of clear eyed, forward looking thinking that separates people who are prepared from people who are caught off guard. The third is economic shifts. The 2008 financial crisis wiped out roughly $10 trillion in U.S. household wealth. The 2020 pandemic triggered one of the fastest equity market downward spirals, a 34% drop in 33 days. In both cases, recovery came. But not everyone recovered equally, and not everyone had the time horizon to wait. Those are the dramatic examples. But the economic shift I want to focus on is slower, quieter, and in some ways more insidious: the erosion of purchasing power. Inflation, a weakening dollar, rising costs of healthcare, housing, and education. These forces don't announce themselves with a crash. They arrive gradually and they make your retirement projections obsolete in slow motion. The number you save towards still exists, but what buys has quietly shrunk. Here's something that rarely gets discussed openly in American financial planning circles, but that anyone with international experience understands immediately. The US dollar can stretch. A lifestyle that costs $8,000 a month in American suburbs, a comfortable, not extravagant lifestyle, can often be replicated for $2,500 to $3,500 a month in Panama City, in Medellin, in Lisbon, in Chiang Mai, or dozens of other cities that offer modern infrastructure, excellent healthcare, vibrant culture, and genuine quality of life. We're not talking about sacrifice. We are talking about arbitrage, geographic arbitrage, using the strength of your dollar or your pension or your social security check in a market where it buys 2 to 3 times as much. People with dual residency and foreign held assets don't just have a backup plan. They have currency diversification built into their life structure. They have optionality over where they deploy their spending power. When the US economy tightens, their options expand rather than contract. And that asymmetry, the ability to benefit from global conditions rather than being trapped by domestic ones, is one of the most powerful financial advantages you can build for yourself right now. The last trigger is war and is the one nobody wants to say out loud. So let me say it plainly and then let me contextualize it. There are different types of wars, and no country is off the possibility list. Cyber warfare targeting civilian infrastructure, power grids, water systems, financial networks, hospitals. It is not a future threat, it is a present, documented, ongoing reality. Nations are actively probing and attacking each other's critical systems right now, today, without a single shot being fired in the traditional sense. And the civilian population bears the consequences. Supply chain fragility was exposed in a way that shocked even experts during the pandemic. A biological event, not a bomb, not an army, brought global logistics to its knees, emptied store shelves, halted manufacturing, and revealed how thin the margin is between normal functioning and systemic disruption. That was a preview, not a worst case. Also, what begins as a localized dispute between two parties has a consistent historical pattern of pulling in neighboring nations, triggering alliance obligations, disrupting trade corridors, collapsing currency values in affected regions, and sending refugee populations across borders in numbers that destabilize receiving countries. The conflict itself may be contained geographically, but the consequences never are. And the global security war, which is the ongoing multidimensional competition to secure strategic advantage across military, technological, economic, and informational domains. These are four triggers, and there are many more. But the goal is not to build backup country strategies around fear. We build them around the same logic that underlies every other form of serious preparation. The best time to build your exit is before you need it. Now, let's get practical, because a strategy without structure is just anxiety with better vocabulary. We've worked with clients across a spectrum of readiness, and we've developed a 3 tier framework that maps out what backup country building actually looks like in practice. Tier 1 is second residency, the foundation, a legal right to live in another country, separate from visiting as a tourist, separate from citizenship, and entirely compatible with maintaining your life and your primary residence in the United States. Second residency is more accessible than most people realize. Entry points include passive income and retirement visas where you show funding to live there, digital nomad visas where you show you have an active income coming in via employment or investment based residency, including real estate purchases, business formation, government bond holdings. Ultimately, you need a jurisdiction where you have rights. The right to local banking and healthcare, the right to rent, and the right to keep your US citizenship. It simply means you have somewhere legitimate to go and the legal right to be there. Tier 2. Once you have a residency anchor, the next layer is building financial infrastructure that exists outside the single jurisdiction that currently governs your entire monetary life. This means foreign bank accounts. It may mean foreign held real estate. It may mean investments and denominated in other currencies. It may mean a local business entity in your country of second residency. The benefits of that diversification are concrete. Currency diversification means your wealth is not entirely denominated in and exposed to a single currency's fluctuations. Jurisdictional diversification means a legal dispute, a creditor action, or a policy change in the United States does not have automatic reach over your entire financial life. Cost of living arbitrage means that if you ever activate your residency option, you have local financial infrastructure already in place and functioning. Millions of Americans maintain foreign bank accounts right now. They're not doing anything unusual, anything illegal, or anything that requires complex planning to manage. They are simply diversified. Tier 3 is the full expression of the backup country strategy. Second citizenship means a second legal identity, a second set of travel rights, a second claim on consular protection, a second passport that opens doors the first one may not, and a second country with a legal obligation to stand behind you. The routes to second citizenship are more varied than most people realize. Naturalization through residency. Live in a country long enough, meet the requirements, pass the language test if required, and apply. Portugal's timeline is 5 years of legal residency. Panama offers naturalization after 5 years as well, with shorter pathways for certain nationalities and professions. Uruguay is 3 to 5 years. Many countries in Latin America and Europe have clear, well trodden naturalization pathways that are entirely achievable for someone who establishes residency now and maintains it through the citizenship by investment. Several countries offer citizenship in exchange for qualifying economic contributions, typically a real estate purchase, a government fund contribution, or a donation to a national development program. Caribbean nations including St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, and Dominica have well-established CBI programs with processing times as short as 3 to 6 months. Thresholds typically begin around $100,000 and scale upward. Malta offers one of the most coveted CBI adjacent programs in Europe, providing EU citizenship through a combination of investment, residency, and contribution. Turkey has a real estate investment pathway at $400,000 that has attracted significant American interest. Here is what I want you to take away from everything we've covered. The question is not whether the world is about to end. It isn't. The question is whether you are operating with the same level of strategic sophistication in your life planning that you already apply to your financial planning, your career planning, and your health planning. Why would you not have a backup country? One election, one law change, one economic shift, one war. Just one of those in any direction on any timeline is enough to make you deeply grateful that you built your backup position when it was easy, affordable, and unhurried. Because here's the truth about all risk management: the time to build it is always before you need it. Health insurance before the diagnosis, flood insurance before the storm, a backup country before the crisis. At ExpatExact, we specialize in exactly this, helping you map your specific options based on your income, your age, your citizenship, heritage, your assets, and your goals, and building a personalized roadmap towards whatever tier of backup country strategy makes sense for your life. We've helped retirees establish pensionado residency in Panama, guided remote workers in building full second residency frameworks in Portugal and Spain that provide the legal right to live anywhere in the European Union, assisted business owners in starting a business in the Netherlands through the DAFT visa, and matched many others to eligible countries that align best with their financial profile, lifestyle preferences, and long-term goals. The link to schedule a consultation with our team is in the description below. We'll start with a conversation about where you are, where you want to be, and what your real options look like surrounding selecting a backup country.